Hello and welcome to the final lecture, which will be about the buying and selling life cycle. And we're going to be talking about bids and proposals, and in the end, we'll relate it to how it connects with the previous three lectures in business law, accounting, and technical communication. Today, the objectives that we want to be able to accomplish are to be able to define the bids and proposals and explain the role that they play in the buying and selling process. List and explain the buyer and seller steps of the buying selling life cycle. Describe how the buying selling life cycle are correlated to business law, accounting, and technical communication. Before we dive into the buying and selling life cycle, we need to discuss a few key terms and what role they play in the buying and selling life cycle. A bid is a price bid in exchange for a good or service. Is another way of defining a price negotiation. A proposal is a written document from the offerer to the offeree making contractual agreements regarding the terms relating to the supplemental bid. These documents are commonly used between sales professionals and purchasing managers. There are typically 5 parts to a proposal, including the executive summary, technical response, delivery response, pricing response, and contractual response. Recall back in our discussion of proposal structure in the technical communication lecture. Those elements discussed would be contained in these 5 proposal parts. Now that we understand what bids and proposals are, why is it so important to create effective bids and proposals? The answer lies in one word: trust. This represents the whole dynamic of how everything that a bidding company does, they all point to trust. Trust is literally the cornerstone of customer loyalty, as well as the value of the offered product or service. In order to maintain trust throughout the bidding and proposal process, there is a buying and selling life cycle that is oriented on both the buyer and the seller. It comes in 3 phases: pre-bid or proposal, bid or proposal phase, and the post-bid or proposal phase. This model represents the buying and selling life cycle where the buyer and seller takes the appropriate steps before, during, and after the bidding and proposal process. Feel free to pause the slide to become familiar with the cycle because this is going to be the main body of the presentation. If you're ready, let's get started on breaking down each step. First, we will focus on the buyer steps in the cycle. Please note that in each slide representing the steps, there will be a flow chart with 3 sections titled Input, Tools and Techniques, and Output. Input refers to the work that the buyer or seller puts in during the relative step. Tools and techniques refer to the number of resources used by the buyer or seller. Output refers to the outcome or follow-up action as a result of the inputs. Also, take note that we will be talking about the buyer steps, then the seller steps, and finally the mutual steps. However, the correct order of these steps is listed in the previous slide on the model you just saw. I'm simply presenting the material in this manner for organizational purposes. The first phase of the buyer phase is the process of identifying which business needs can best be met by procuring products or services outside the organization and then requesting the desired products or services from qualified sellers. The first step of this is procurement planning. Some key inputs include considering past performance work statements, statements of objectives, or solicitation documents. Furthermore, if the organization does not have contract management resources, the business team managing the process must supply both the resources and the expertise to support procurement activities. The procurement planning process must include consideration of what products and services are available in the marketplace, from whom, and under what terms and conditions. Constraints are factors that limit the buyer's options. Constraints typically include funds availability, past experience, resource availability, and urgency of the requirements. Business assumptions made should always be documented. Assumptions are factors that are considered to be true, real, or certain for planning purposes. There are a number of tools and resources to assist with the input of procurement planning. The decision to outsource must be based upon effective market research, experience, and made in cooperation with a multifunctional team, the precise the precise size and identity of which depends on the nature of the undertaking and the buyer's business and organization. It is imperative to take the time to conduct effective market research to understand what best in class companies are doing in terms of products, services, and solutions. Assessing the input to the procurement planning process often requires expert judgment. Such expertise may be provided by any group or individual with specialized knowledge or training and is available from many sources, including other units within the performing organization, consultants and educators, professional and technical associations, and industry groups. There are two main approaches to contracting: competitive methods and non competitive methods. Many of the competitive methods are based upon e procurement. The contracting type and pricing arrangements fall into three categories: fixed price, cost reimbursement, and time and materials contracts. There are also a couple of outputs that are associated with procurement planning. The procurement management plan should describe how remaining procurement processes will be managed. The performance work statement or statement of work describes the buyer's requirements in sufficient detail to allow prospective sellers to determine whether they can provide the product, service, or solution. The second step from the buyer's perspective is solicitation planning. Notice how the inputs carry over from the outputs. These follow-up actions are often the following steps input. Therefore, if we have discussed the input, we will just mention it as an input and move on. Buyer Step 2 inputs include creating a procurement management plan and seller participation through the statement of work or performance work statement. Standard forms can be used as a tool which may include standardized versions of contracts, standardized descriptions of procurement items, or standardized versions of all or part of the needed bid documents. As in procurement planning, expert judgment is a vital tool. Now on to outputs. Procurement documents or solicitations request proposals from prospective sellers. Evaluation criteria are used to rate or score proposals. They may be objective or subjective and are often included as part of the procurement documents. Modifications to one or more statement of works may be identified during solicitation planning. Conducting one-on-one discussions between the buying organization and individual sellers or contractors to learn more about the contractor and their capabilities and the requirements and capabilities is important to exercise due diligence. The third step in the buying process is preparing for solicitation. Procurement documents are an input for this step, which helps the buyer generate a list of qualified prospective sellers to select from. Seller focus groups, meetings, conferences, or web-based surveys are ways of gathering information from prospective sellers before they prepare their proposals. Existing lists of potential sellers can be expanded by placing advertisements in general circulation publications. Depending upon the complexity, urgency, dollar amount, and numerous other factors, the buying organization will typically conduct an informal or formal review of the solicitation prior to its actual submission or release to review and approve the solicitation for submission. Often, buying organizations realize they need much more input from prospective sellers before they can effectively state their performance-based requirements. As a result, many buying organizations submit a request for information to gather more information before they prepare a draft request for proposal. On many important outsourcing requirements, the buyers will use a draft request for proposal as a means to gather information from sellers, provide information to sellers, and improve their request for proposal by providing a draft for review and comment. The key is to provide appropriate time to obtain feedback and incorporated needed changes. An informed and professional buying organization will need to seek to understand the procurement opportunity and risk from not only the buyer's perspective, but also from the seller's perspective. The output from the solicitation preparation process is to receive quality bids or proposals, which are the written or oral offers to perform services or provide products to another party. Now we have moved on to the second phase, which takes place during bidding and proposing. The fourth step in the buying process is source selection. The buyer will ultimately select a seller or sellers from among the bids or proposals submitted in response to a solicitation. In the source selection planning process, the buyer prepares to evaluate sources of goods and services and decide which one or more has the greatest potential for successful performance. An evaluation standard is a gauge used to measure a potential source to determine its value. It is critical to ensure the buyer has the right people dedicated to supporting the source selection planning and evaluate both quality and quantity of potential source in order to succeed. A bidder's conference is conducted by the buyer to discuss the draft request for proposal and obtain seller feedback on the source selection process. After selecting the attributes to be used for evaluation as well as establishing evaluation standards, the next task is to determine the importance of each attribute relative to the others. A screening system is used to process the information regarding potential sources. Using consultants or outside experts to help in this process is common and can be of great value. The process a buyer uses for source selection will vary based on numerous factors. The output of the source selection planning step is the source selection plan, which includes the people, budget, and time to select the right seller or sellers. Next, we move on to the third phase of the buying-selling life cycle, which are the activities that are followed after the bidding and proposal process. The fifth buyer step, source selection evaluation, is about successfully implementing your source selection plan to identify the right seller or sellers to provide in a timely manner the desired products, services, and solutions at a fair and reasonable price. In order to conduct source selection evaluation, you must have one or more bids and proposals. Typically, most buyers will seek at least 2 or 3 bids or proposals from qualified or even pre-qualified sellers. The source selection plan should include the following key elements: an evaluation criterion, evaluation standards, weighting system, screening system, and source selection process. The buyer must ensure the appropriate quality and quantity of human resources are available to support the source selection evaluation process. Additionally, the buyer must ensure that the people involved in the source selection evaluation are properly trained to conduct and document the evaluation process fairly, cost-effectively, and efficiently. Opportunity and risk management is an important element of both contract management and project management because every project contains elements of uncertainty, such as varying amounts of funding, changes in contract delivery dates, changes in technical requirements, and increases or decreases in quantity. Buyers should always include past performance as an evaluation criteria in their request for proposal and subsequent source selection process. The weighting of the importance of past performance will vary based on numerous factors. Regarding source selection, there are 7 practices that are considered the best for this activity. This includes cycle time targets, greater pre-solicitation efforts, proposal page limitations, reduced number of evaluation factors, small source selection teams, oral presentations, and limiting the competitive range. There's a real compelling need for buying organizations to spend some time and effort evaluating the potential product, service, and solution throughout its life cycle, from initial procurement through operational use to the end of the product or service life. In making decisions from the source selection, the key to source selection is ultimately identifying the most qualified individual within the buying organization to serve as the lead decision maker or source selection authority. Oral presentations can serve as a powerful and effective tool for both buyers and sellers. Buyers should require sellers to provide oral presentations as needed. The key output is the selection of a seller or sellers who will provide timely delivery of quality products, services, and solutions at a fair and reasonable price. Now that we have covered the buyer-specific steps in the buying-selling life cycle, we will go over the seller-specific steps in the life cycle. The first step of the selling process are pre-sales activities. The three key inputs for this are knowledge of your company, your client, and your customer. The degree to which you master each of these will greatly impact your ability to spot potential opportunities and get a jump on your competitors. There will often be more opportunities than you have resources to pursue, so you must prioritize and direct resources to those opportunities which have the highest probability of success and payback versus those which do not. Based on the level of risk and opportunity, you will need to make bid or no bid decisions. There are opportunity and risk elements used to evaluate both levels. The factors that influence opportunity include the following: corporate direction match, competitive environment, revenue value, potential profitability, in-house content, future business potential, resources to bid, probability to success, collateral benefit, and overall strategic value. The elements of risk include the following: customer commitment, corporate competence, external obstacles, opportunity engagement, solution lifecycle match, period of performance, delivery schedule, resource coordination, non-performance penalties, and overall feasibility. Another way to measure the opportunity and risk is to use a scoreboard with these aforementioned elements. The next step is to gather competitive intelligence, which determines who the competitors are, what the solution you believe they will bid is, what the strengths of the competitor or their solution are, and what the weaknesses of the competitor or their solution are. One useful tool to analyze these factors is the competitor profile form. Gathering competitive intelligence is also useful. Note that this is referring to those competing for the same specific opportunity as you, rather than the competitors that are merely in the marketplace. The next step is to develop a win strategy, which is a collection of messages or points designed to guide the customer's perception of you, your solution, and your competitors. Identifying your sweet spot and your sour spot is a key tool in developing a win strategy. The sweet spot is where your company's strengths meet the customer's needs and coincide with your competitor's weaknesses. In contrast, the sour spot is where your competitor's strengths meet the customer's needs and coincide with your company's weaknesses. To assist with this, you can use a sweet spot, sour spot analysis, a win theme and strategy form, a customer positioning planner, and a customer contact plan. Having developed a win strategy, the next step is to outline the opportunity by developing material to review with the stakeholders to solicit their buy-in to pursue the opportunity. While you will want to customize this to your company and your business, below is an outline of the basic information you will want to document into the stakeholder presentation for review. In this meeting, it will cover the customer profile, opportunity profile, competitor profile, win strategy, issues or concerns, response requirements, and a bid or no bid decision. By the end of this process, there should be a qualified opportunity, competitor profile, win strategy, and an outline of offer for stakeholder opportunity review. Step 2 of the selling cycle is to make a decision to bid or not to bid. If you successfully completed all the steps described in the pre-sales activities, you have completed all the inputs required for this step. Countless opportunities are lost, and resources are wasted due to failure to properly solicit and secure stakeholder buy-in. Most companies have a schedule of authorizations or schedule of approvals, which identifies the type and dollar value of commitment that can be made by individuals at various levels, which is an excellent guide for asserting the right level, stakeholder. A common mistake made is to minimize the number of stakeholders whose support is solicited. If you don't get these stakeholders on board with the plan, you will likely encounter problems during the bid phase. After using these tools and applying the inputs, the main objective should be to communicate the opportunities and risks of a bid. Present the facts to the stakeholders so that they understand the opportunity and the risk. This should be done in an unbiased and objective manner. The second objective, obtain alignment on strategy, refers to ensuring all the stakeholders that they not only understand and agree to pursue the opportunity, but more importantly, are in alignment on the solution proposed and the win strategy. The third objective, get resource commitment, refers to ensuring that all the stakeholders agree to provide the people and the non-personnel resources needed to pursue the opportunity. The fourth objective, escalation support, refers to soliciting an agreement from stakeholders to actively help resolve roadblocks. The stakeholder opportunity review package should be updated with any material changes that occurred during the review session. As part of the initial resource commitment, the stakeholders should assign individuals to a capture core team to develop the capture project plan. The second phase of the selling cycle begins here at the third step of the selling cycle, which is the bid and proposal development. The inputs for this step are selecting a capture team, drafting a preliminary proposal capture project plan, drafting a communication plan for the team, and reviewing past proposal lessons learned and best practices. There are a lot of tools and techniques used for this step, so bear with me here. The single biggest influence in developing a winning bid is having a team of influences who are aligned and dedicated to the same goal. This requires planning and cultivation on the part of the capture manager and the core capture team. This capture team will then execute and finalize the project plan. This begins with capturing team status meetings, regular status meetings. Regular status meetings are essential to ensuring the team is aligned and on track by collecting status on work tasks and action items, as well as providing a forum to exchange information with the team. One of the biggest challenges during bid development is to effectively and efficiently resolve open items. However, be aware that the longer they remain unresolved, the bigger the potential negative impact they have. The key to resolving open items is to identify them early as action items for resolution. An important aspect of ensuring continued stakeholder support is to keep them informed on progress. If there is a lengthy time between the stakeholder opportunity review and the stakeholder approval review, you may want to hold a stakeholder status review. The purpose of this review is to keep stakeholders informed on the status of the work. As the capture team develops the solution, it is critical that the team remains tightly linked to ensure the holistic compliance of the solution to solve the customer's problem or objective and satisfy company requirements for profitability and risk. Due to a typical short time frame, you will want a way to communicate the solution to the team in a summary form. One technique that is effective at achieving both ends is to create a solution architecture document. When responding to customer solicitations, it is not uncommon to have customer requirements that cannot be fully met or even at all. A common technique is used to identify where you have gaps in your ability to meet customer requirements is through the use of a compliance matrix. Another common problem is ensuring the linkage of the design, description, and pricing of the solution. A solution linkage matrix is a simple tool that can help ensure the solution is solution design is compliant and matches the solution described and the solution priced. As part of the developing solution, you will also need to develop a delivery plan that answers the who, what, when, where, how, and how much to deliver to your customer. As you develop the solution and your response, you will find that there is uncertainty regarding future events, which represent risks. This is where we begin to develop a risk mitigation plan. This starts with identifying sources of risk. You have 4 strategies in how to mitigate the risk. Risk is mitigated through one of 4 fundamental strategies: avoid the risk, transfer the risk, share the risk, or reserve the risk. For each risk identified, you will want to develop and document a risk mitigation plan. As you may identify a number of risks, you will want a means to track them and summarize them for the stakeholders. This can be documented through the risk mitigation planning log. After developing our risk mitigation plan, we need to develop 2 business cases. One will be an internal business case showing your company's revenues and costs associated with the opportunity, which will be required to secure authority to bid. The other will be a customer business case to be included in your response to show the costs and benefits your customer will incur and realize by implementing your solution. For both business cases, you will need to develop a clear set of assumptions regarding the size of the opportunity and the timing of the delivery. This is done by producing a worst case, most likely case, and best case scenario. You can simplify the work required to create each scenario by using business case models. You may find that your company does not have 100% of the solution to offer and that you need to source product or service from a third party. When you develop your solution models, determine the in-house versus third-party product and service amount in each model. This is where our knowledge of third-party contractual rights from our previous business law discussion becomes helpful. The customer business case can be developed using the same problem and solution models. The business case term should be developed by someone on the pricing team with financial training. Here is where our prior discussion of accounting will become helpful, because not only do we know the key terms, but also how to use sophisticated pricing models to calculate accurate costs. Having developed the solution and mitigated the risks, it is time to present the written proposal. This is where the proposal elements learned in our prior discussion of technical communication come in handy. The following components are attributes of a winning proposal: a powerful executive summary. It is audience designed. The content is 1/3 visual and 2/3 text with ample white space, separately bound, customer focused, strategy driven, with rich benefits, with a powerful proposal design, with double exposure on a single page, double or message column, themed and captioned, emphatically written, active voice, and an effective organization. The outputs include a well-developed customer solution, including the design, pricing, and delivery plan, risk mitigation plans, and business cases of both internal distribution and customer presentation. Also developed should be a winning customer proposal, generally comprised of an executive summary, technical response, delivery response, pricing response, and contractual response. The 4th step of the selling portion of the life cycle are the bid and proposal review and approval process. The inputs of this step include the outputs of the previous step, which is customer solution, including the design, pricing, and delivery plan, risk mitigation plans, internal and customer business cases, and the customer bid and proposal. There are some general actions that can be taken for this step. First, we must consider why proposals lose evaluation points. This evaluation list is pretty extensive, so be sure to take a look at the book to see a specific list of this criterion. Next, we conduct pink team reviews to ensure that the bid and proposal are complete. There's a list of questions that can be used during these pink team reviews. Once again, due to the large amount of material, I will go ahead and refer you to the book for specifics. In order to ensure feedback is properly captured for the authors, you will want to document deficiencies using a proposal deficiency form. In order to ensure all deficiencies are closed, you should create a summary of all deficiencies by their volume or section. After the pink team reviews, we move on to the red team reviews. The objective of red team reviews is to ensure the proposal makes sense and that it solves the customer's business problem. The red team uses a checklist of questions to review for organization and emphasis, win theme and strategies, compliance and responsiveness, appearance and presentation, consistency and brevity, and visuals. Once again, very long list, so go ahead and check out the book for this checklist. You will want to document feedback from the red team reviewers for the authors using the red team evaluation form. In order for the red team to be effective, there is a long list of do's and don'ts in effectively utilizing a red team. Once again, make sure to take a look at the book for this list. Next, in the steps is to obtain offer certifications before proceeding with stakeholder review. Upon completing this step, you will meet with the stakeholders and solicit their approval to submit the bid to the customer. The outputs of the bid and proposal reviews and approval step is the authority to bid, which grants permission for the bid or proposal to be delivered to the customer. Stakeholder approval is documented in the updated stakeholder approval review package along with appropriate signed approval documents as required by your company's schedule of authorizations or approvals. Now we have proceeded into the third phase of the life cycle, specifically onto the fifth step of the selling process, which is the oral presentation and response to questions. All of the key inputs for this are bids and proposals, source selection plan, people, and training as previously discussed. The first tool for this step is coaching and training for the oral presentation. Oral presentations either make or break all the work behind the scenes prior to the presentation. Therefore, companies have begun to invest in building oral presentation skills through coaching and training. It is essential that the seller has the right people available to quickly and effectively address any specific buyer questions. If your company loses the bid, the seller should immediately request in writing from the buyer to conduct a debriefing. This should include the following: significant weakness or deficiencies found in the proposal, overall evaluation of the price or cost, the technical ratings, overall ranking of the offerers, and answers to questions relevant to the buyer's conduct of the competition and source selection. The outputs of this process are a professionally delivered oral presentation and the effective response to buyer bid and proposal questions. Now that we have gone through this specific buying and selling steps of the life cycle, there are two more steps in the cycle that are considered mutual processes. We will now review these remaining two steps in the buying-selling life cycle. The sixth mutual step is contract negotiation and formation. Contract negotiation is the process by which two or more competent parties reach an agreement to buy or sell products or services. Let's begin with the inputs for this step. The solicitation is either an oral or written request for an offer prepared by the buyer and provided to one or more potential sellers. The bid or proposal is either an oral or written offer by potential sellers to provide products or services to the buyer, usually in response to a solicitation. It also includes all supporting documentation, such as delivery plans, assumptions, and cost or price models. Source selection is the process by which a buyer selects a seller or source of supply for products or services. Developing the evaluation criteria for source selection requires three prerequisites. First, the buyer must understand what goods or services it wants to buy. Second, the buyer must understand the industry that will provide the required goods or services. And third, the buyer must understand the market practices of that industry. The attributes of interest are those that the consumer thinks are important for satisfaction. The attributes that one customer thinks are important may be inconsequential to another. The past performance of a seller is often a critical aspect of contract negotiation. Regarding any applicable previous contracts, a few key questions to consider are whether the seller provided products or services to this buyer in the past. If so, what did the previous contract say? How was it negotiated? Who negotiated it? The competitor profile, developed during the pre-bid phase, provides a written summary of the seller's competitors and their respective strengths and weaknesses compared to the sellers. Ethics are especially important in light of numerous recent cases of corporate greed, corruption, and violations of state, federal, or international laws. Every company should have mandatory business ethics policies, procedures, and well-defined standards of conduct. Knowing what the competitors are offering is essential for a successful outcome to negotiation. On to the tools and techniques. The contract negotiation process is composed of three phases: planning negotiations, conducting negotiations, and documenting the negotiations. Conducting contract negotiation is a complex activity that requires a broad range of skills. Providing negotiators with the best available training in contract negotiation is vital. Top negotiators help their organization save money and make higher profits. In preparation for a negotiation, there are 10 actions that should be taken. Prepare yourself and your team, know the other party, know the big picture, identify and prioritize objectives, create options, select fair standards, examine alternatives, select your strategy, tactics, and counter tactics, and develop a solid and approved team negotiation plan. When conducting the negotiation, there are another 10 action steps to take. Determine who has the authority, prepare the facility, use an agenda, introduce the team, set the right tone, exchange information, focus on objectives, use strategy, tactics, and other counter tactics, make counter offers, and document the agreement or know when to walk away. There are yet another 10 action steps to take if the negotiation leads to an agreement. Prepare the negotiation memorandum. Send the memorandum to the other party. Offer to write the contract. Prepare the contract. Prepare negotiation results summary. Obtain required reviews and approvals. Send the contract to the other party for signatures. Provide copies of the contract to affected organizations. Document the lessons learned. And prepare the contract administration plan. The output is very simple in this case. You can either choose to contract with the other party or walk away, because no business is better than bad business. The final step of the life cycle is the mutual process of contract performance, administration, and closeout. The first input is to contract with the other party. The results of performing the contractual expectations will affect the contractual administration. Change requests are a common element of most contracts. An effective process for managing change must be in place to ensure that all requests are handled smoothly. Changes are opportunities either to increase or decrease profitability for the seller. Changes are an necessary aspect of business for buyers because of changes in their needs. An efficient process must be developed for handling invoices and payments throughout contract administration. Few areas cause more concern to sellers than late payment. Buyers can realize savings by developing an efficient and timely payment process because sellers are often willing to give discounts for early payment. Although specific policies that will apply to contract administration depend on the contracting parties, 4 policies are key: compliance with contract terms and conditions, effective internal and external communication and control, effective control of contract changes, and effective resolution of claims and disputes. Before the award of a contract, each party should develop a contract administration plan and assign the responsibility of administering the contract to a contract manager. Before performance begins, the buyer and seller should meet to discuss their joint administration of the contract. At the meeting, the parties should review the contract terms and conditions and discuss who will do what. They will also establish protocols for written and oral communications and for progress measurement and reporting and discussing procedures for managing change and resolving differences. During contract administration, the project manager, contract manager, and responsible business managers must observe performance, collect information, and measure actual contract achievement. Every contract must establish a clear invoicing and payment system or process. The buyer and seller must agree to whom invoices should be sent and what information is required. No one should be surprised when, from time to time, contracting parties find themselves in disagreement about the correct interpretation of contract terms and conditions. Most of such agreements are minor and are resolved without too much difficulty. Occasionally, however, the parties will find themselves entangled in a seemingly intractable controversy. Try as they might, they cannot resolve their differences. If the dispute goes unresolved for too long, one or both of the parties may threaten or even initiate litigation. Litigation is time-consuming, costly, and risky. This leads us right into the first output of this step: documentation. Documentation is essential to provide proof of performance, management of changes, justification for claims, and evidence in the unlikely event of litigation. Contracts frequently include a clause that authorizes the buyer to order the seller to conform with certain changes made at the buyer's discretion. If the price and schedule adjustments are not negotiated before authorizing performance under the change, the parties must negotiate such matters after performance. Contract closeout refers to verifying that all administrative matters are concluded on a contract that is otherwise physically complete. In other words, the seller has delivered the required supplies or performed the required services, and the buyer has inspected and accepted the supplies or services. Under some circumstances, the parties may agree to end their contract even though the original objectives were not met. They may reach this agreement through negotiation or arbitration. In a breach of contract case, one or both of the parties fail to keep their promises. This could result in arbitration or litigation. Contract closure by mutual agreement or breach of contract is called contract termination. This ultimately concludes the process of the life cycle. Now we're going to talk about how the buying and selling life cycle relate to the 3 previous lectures of business law, accounting, and technical communication. The buying and selling life cycle is very much a process that involves contract formation, much like the ones we discussed in the business law lecture. Therefore, it is vital to know how to jump each contractual hurdle. If there are third parties involved, then they are also considered in this process. A knowledge of business law can help both parties, the buyer and seller, understand their rights in forming a contractual bid or proposal. In the event of a breach of contract, each party would also know their rights and understand the specific implications of that offense. In this case, recall our discussion about contractual discharge and remedies. In accounting, we learned about multiple managerial accounting methods that are used to assist in creating profitability for a company. Setting a price actually requires the seller to utilize the cost volume profit method in order to figure out the potential profitability while setting a competitive yet fair price. However, this means surpassing the break-even point in order to retain residual profit. When figuring out the price to charge for a product or service, the seller must remember the effect of activities upon a product's traceable expenses through applying the activity-based costing method. In order for either the seller or the buyer to make the very best buying or selling decisions, each must apply the principles of differential analysis to determine the financial impact of both decisions. We must decide to buy or not to buy, or to sell or not to sell. In the technical communication lecture, we learned specifically how to create a proposal. We carefully considered how it is both a reader and a writer-based document and how there is an established structure. The structure described at the beginning of this lecture is organized slightly different than the one in the technical communication lecture, but all the required content is the same, whatever the organization. As you can see, there is definitely a triangular interdependence upon business law, accounting, and technical communication that all point to the buying and selling life cycle. The business law portion relates by focusing on the contractual formation principles. The accounting portion focuses on the pricing strategies for companies to retain profitability. The technical communication portion focuses on the overall structure and organization of a bid or proposal. A knowledge in any or all of these areas can greatly assist the buyer or seller in making wise decisions for their respective companies. That's it for this lecture. So thank you so much for listening in, and have a great day.